You are listening to the WB Download, coming to you from Wieland Builders Showroom in Studio 1C. We are a podcast centered around building custom homes, the customer experience of building a custom home, and a really entertaining listen from many great guests and interviews that may or may not have anything to do with building. I'm excited to share with you their voice and their stories that will enhance your idea of the custom builder world. Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Wieland, president of Wieland Builders, and here on the WB Download, coming to you live from Studio 1C in Wieland Builders headquarters here in Westchester, Ohio. Thanks for joining us here, and we're so excited to get this podcast kicked off. This is our first episode, first ever, so we're going to have some hiccups and some things going on along the way, which may make it funny, might make it more real. We have a great show coming to you today. Our first guest of our podcast is none other than Jack Wieland. And, he's a builder or was a builder, and he's also my dad. So I'm really excited and to have him on here. And I don't want to get too deep into it because I think he's got an awesome story. We've got a lot of good topics, and it's probably going to turn into 2 or 3 episodes, but pretty cool. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, everybody, this is what our first segment is, what we're going to call What's Happening. So we're going to tell you what's happening right now in the world of Wieland Builders. We're going to talk about what's happening in my life and talk about what's happening just as a builder. So, here we are in the first part of January 2023, and what's going on in the world as a builder and in my life and in the industry for me as a builder at the end of the year, coming actually more in December, I seem to do a lot more banking and working with a lot of numbers all the time, as we always do. But we closed a handful of jobs at the end of 2022, getting Christmas bonuses ready and out to the employees, and just making sure our books are in order for the end of the year as we approach the new year for tax purposes. All of that takes a lot of time and concentration for me, maybe because I'm just not smart enough to do it, and I really have to focus on it like everything. We also work on our budget for 2023, which seems to be something we're always working on. And as always, we're preparing for the year to end as we prepare for a new year to begin. And it's a lot of good stuff. It's always fun to look back on the previous year, and it's always fun to look ahead of the year to come, and a lot of things happening. So something else we focus heavily on here is our goals and objectives for the company, and for the year and longer. This is really important. So we dove into them, and here's where we landed. Our one of our goals is to achieve $12 million in sales and closings. And this is, something we focus on for our operational costs versus gross profit versus net profit. And we're in business, and this is something that's really important is profit and dollar volume. So the other thing is to improve our average dollar sale to $1.5 million. Right now we're at about 1,375, and we want to improve that, and we want to continue to improve that. Our goal is to build as few houses as possible. We want to focus on these projects. We want to focus on our customers, and the more projects you get going on, the less focus we have on that. And this is what we are. We're a customer service oriented business. So leading into that, the other thing that we have is we want to improve our customer service and being intentional with everything we do. We don't kind of do something. We don't maybe do something. We're doing it. And we want to make sure that we're doing that with our customers. We want to be positive. Something that I hate more than anything in this world is when you ask somebody how they're doing and they say, peachy, just another day in paradise. And I'm sitting there thinking, what, is your life really that bad? Just be positive. So we want to make sure that we're always positive as how we're looking at things and how we're looking up. We can't let the doom and gloom get you. So we want to be organized. And with that, it's an inner office thing. It's an inner company thing. We have a lot of milestones that we put in place for the build. We have a lot of paperwork that we put in place for the build. We have scheduling, we have communication, we have a lot of things that need to be organized. And then the other thing is setting real expectations with everything, not just with our customers, with ourselves, with our teammates, with everything that we do. You have to be for real, true, and honest. And that's one of our core values, which all of these line up with our core values, by the way. And the other thing is just be better people. Just be better. That's one of our goals. Just be better. Be better people, be better builders, and be a better company. And I always say that, as far as being better in life in general, we have therapists, we have preachers, we have, coaches, we have everybody, we have teammates. there's no reason why we can't be improving ourselves as we move forward. And then, the other goal that we have in here is to create a successful podcast. So we're going to see from today on how that goes. We have an awesome list of people that we are going to be interviewing on here as we go through the year and just talk about building and keeping people up to date with things that are happening with Wieland Builders and things that are happening in our industry. So those are our goals. We have a lot more objectives that we have inside of those goals that I could go on and on about, but without a target, you have nowhere to aim. So our focus on customer service is really important to me and the team. And I don't think we've always been at the top of our game here, and we want to make it better. I don't think we actually sucked at it, but I just want to make sure that we improve it. So we're always looking ahead to the near and far future, and 2023 is no different. And right now in the building world, things are different as they always are. If you'd asked me a couple months ago, I would have felt like it was doom and gloom and things were just going to be hell freezing over and coming into 2023. But now it seems like it's taken a different turn, and we're looking at things like metal dropping and fuel dropping and lumber dropping in cost anyway. And the inconsistency is something I've always disliked in this business, and it's driven me crazy nearly all my life. So, we're positive for 2023. And we're just focused on, I got a good friend of mine named Myron Bowling who always used to say, you focus on your own economy and don't worry about anybody else's. And I think if you listen to reports, it'll drive you crazy. And if you focus on yourself and your company and forward, you're going to be in really good shape. So, hey, that's what's happening right now in this first part of January 2023. So let's lead into our first guest. He is Jack Wieland, who is a builder. I don't think you ever lose that title. And I think once you've lived it, you're just a builder. So here in Southwest Ohio, he's also my dad, the man that gave me and my brother the opportunity to become builders. And a little background on him: he started his business with his dad, and my mom's dad joined them at some point, and then they were building apartments. In the mid 60s, he decided he wanted to go out and build homes on his own. And well, that's what he did. So, there's so much more to the story, and we're going to dive into it, and I'm going to enjoy having him here. So let's go ahead and bring him in. To get situated. This is our first episode, so we had to make sure we get our headphones on and get our microphones squared away, and so we've done that. So welcome.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How
Are you
about
nervous?
You? No.
Your ass. I'm nervous. I think I'm sweating, and I've been thinking about this for so long, but I'm excited about it because I think you're the one that's going to have the majority of the stories that we're going to relate to and things that have brought us up. So. I guess, one of the things we always talk about is having our guests bring something in as far as some memorabilia. And so you brought a couple things here. What did you bring with you today?
Well, the first one is a picture of, it's myself and Elder Marshall, who was executive officer of the Home Builders Association, Jerry Honorlaw, who was a chairman, and Alan Paul, who was the original chairman. They called him Chairman Emeritus. And so that picture has some significance because it was the first chairman, the second chairman, and the third chairman of Homerama.
Wow. That's pretty cool. That's a lot of history there. I've worked with all of those people too, which is odd because it makes me feel as old as you are right now.
I beg your pardon.
So what else did you bring here?
Well, it's a trophy that I got from the Spirit of Construction that I was fortunate enough to be awarded. I can't think of the year, 2006.
Yep.
And so it was a pretty significant award for me because it was citywide, presentation where it was commercial, residential, and so forth. And so it was really an honor to receive that award.
That's cool. The Spirit of Construction is a board that I sat on for a little while. I made a lot of friends there, a lot of commercial guys, but the room is filled with oh, I don't know, probably 600 to 1,000 people down at, it used to be the Cintas Center. I don't know what it is now, Duke Energy Center. And that's it's a Lifetime Achievement Award. It's a really big award to be honored by your peers. And I thought that was pretty cool. So, I want to get into your story, and I want to talk through things with you, and it's going to be kind of fun. I hope we make it fun. I hope you don't get too nervous and get emotional and start crying on me, but,
I may.
Okay. All right. I might too. I told you I get a little emotional these days. So, I guess one of the things I always think about is when you pull up to this building, what do you think about it? I mean, do you have any emotions? Do you care about it? Do you get, what do you think?
Well, obviously I'm proud of you guys for what you've accomplished, and this building is just fantastic. I thought we were proud of the last office we had, but this is far surpasses that. And just while I was waiting for you, I walked around, and it's decorated so nice, and everything's laid out very well. It's a working office, and it's just a real proud feeling.
I feel the same way. I mean, when we pull up here, and it's, we wanted to design this place because we didn't want to carry a model home, and we wanted to be able to bring people here and be able to see it and see what we do, and relate to it. All of our office furniture is more like home office furniture. It's not commercial office furniture, and just a lot of pride to it. And I enjoy it when you come in here, because I feel like you put off that sense that you're proud of us. And I hope that other people feel the same way, even our customers, when they come here.
The only thing I miss is on our other office, we had a big garage in the back. And if I got too bored in the office, I'd go out and work in the garage on a toy or something.
I always did that too. When I got really pissed off, I'd just go back in the garage and walk around for a little while so the girls couldn't hear me being mad. And I thought you were just bored, but I think you were doing the same thing. The other thing I miss is we always had an office right across the street from a bar, and we don't have that. I mean, we had O'Charlie's down here, but then they went out of business. And when our first office was up the street from Remington's and Hooters, and then which used to be the Music Palace, I think, when you first got there, and then our other office was across the street from Rick's Tavern, and now we're just kind of out here in the middle of nowhere. I think we're getting better with age.
Well, I don't want anybody to think that we had a bar across the street. We went there for lunch, for crying out loud.
Lunch was at 5:00.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, where were you born and raised at?
Well, I was actually born in Price Hill here in Cincinnati. And when I guess I was about 8 years old, my parents moved to Bridgetown. And that's where I grew up until I was, 17. And then we moved to Pennytown. And my dad had a friend that lived in Gulf Manor, and so they met halfway, and my dad built his house and his own house in the same neighborhood. And they were in each other's weddings, and they were friends for many, many years.
Who's that, Bob Kuhn?
Bob Kuhn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. I never knew that. I think about, when I was thinking about putting all these questions and topics together, I think that I've heard bits and pieces of stories throughout the years, and I hope that I hear more of the stories as we go on. So, you're over there, and we always thought it was considered Finneytown. Whenever I talk to a bunch of people leading up to this, everybody thinks about you as fast cars and motorcycles and things like that. So I mean, you still have that. I mean, you've always had it since I was a little kid. I mean, you've had a fascination. You had Corvettes and you had motorcycles. You still have Corvettes. You still have motorcycles. It's something that you've always had. You've had fast boats, and seems like it's kind of where you. I mean, I never saw you as like a gearhead and a motorhead or anything like that. But did you like building them, or did you just like driving them?
Well, both. Working on them, building them, driving them. Riding is still my favorite thing to do. I don't get to do it much anymore because all my friends have since sold their bikes, and they got older and didn't feel comfortable anymore. But when I lived in Bridgetown, that's all they did over there was cars and motorcycles, and it was just it just seems like it was and part of that, it was the times, in the 50s and early 60s. A friend of mine had a Harley Davidson, and we ended up racing it, and it was a drag race. Now, I was a lot littler then, and I was 16, and he was younger than that.
What about meeting Mom? Where'd you meet her at?
And I actually dated her girlfriend first, just because I seemed to be talking to her more that night. And the more I thought about it, I thought, boy, I'm with the wrong girl. I think I'd like to meet Sue again, my wife. And so we were down there on a Friday night about 2 weeks later. And another friend of mine that knew Sue, I ran into her and I said, say, is Sue here? And she said, yeah. And I walked across the dance floor and ran into her on the dance floor. We started dancing, and the rest is three kids 53 years later. Right.
So what was your attraction to her? What made you want to be with her?
Well, obviously she was pleasant, and she was, clean cut and nice and funny. And and we just hit it off. It's not only a good relationship, she was a partner, in this business. She worked in the business for a lot of years and took care of all my shortcomings, which is many.
I know what you mean. For me, I mean, on my side, I mean, not for you, but so how did you propose to her?
Well, I kept it a secret, and there was one friend of mine who was in our wedding, Tom Hall. I told him what I was going to do, which he was really surprised. But I mean, I was 25 years old. So I went out and I caught my father-in-law, future father-in-law, on the job because he was a contractor. And I asked him, and you'd have to know him, but, when I asked him, he said, well, son of a bitch, Jack, that'd be fine with me. And that's just how he put it. And so I asked him not to tell, my future mother-in-law. My mom and dad didn't know anything. No one knew anything but me and Tom Hall. And so I took her out to dinner and at a place called the Lookout House. And then we left there and we went to a park up in Price Hill called Mount Echo, I think it is. And there's an overlook there that overlooks the city. It's just gorgeous at night, gorgeous during the day. And I don't think there was any question of whether she was going to accept. We both knew that sooner or later it was going to happen. But anyway, she was pretty shocked.
So I think that's one of the greatest stories is with Grandpa, and people don't know him and the way he talked all the time. And Cousin Lori always says that he's the only guy in the world, that can cuss like crazy and make it seem like it's okay. And I was telling Preacher Ben one day about how when he was in the hospital dying and the priest was out walking in the hallways, and he said, hey, did anybody want me to come in and say anything for him? And I talking to Grandpa and I said, hey, there's a preacher out there in the hallway and he wants to know if you want to come in and say anything for you. And he says, well, goddamn, hell yeah, tell him to come on in here. So I was telling Preacher Ben about that, and I told him about when you asked him if you could marry Mom, and it's just a trip to listen to. So I probably have my timeline mixed up a little bit, but let's talk about the Marine Corps. You mentioned it a little bit ago, and I didn't know when that was and when you did it, but what made you want to enlist in the Marine Corps?
Well, times were different back then. The government, initiated the draft. And so when you were 18 years old, you were eligible to be drafted. And sooner or later, you would be drafted. So this friend of mine we were dating sisters. And we talked about it quite a bit. I was going to UC at night, wasn't enjoying it. And I just knew that I had to get on with my life and get this over with. Sooner or later, they were going to draft me. As long as you were in school, you were safe, so to speak. And I've always been very patriotic. I am today, I was then. And my dad was a Marine, and this friend of mine, his brother-in-law was a Marine, and we were both tough kids, and we thought that was the best avenue for us. So we enlisted in the buddy system. And I was only in.
You guys get to stick together the whole time? If you go and join together, you guys get to stay in the same unit and everything?
Yeah, because we signed up and we were in communications. And so through boot camp, we were in the same platoon. And it was interesting, two guys from Cincinnati in the same platoon. And it seems like sometimes everybody got in trouble but us. And then when that happens, it's not pleasant, because at night they take it out on you.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was boot camp, and I was in for, I think, 4 months, and we were going to go to Camp Lejeune for rifle training, and they gave us a hearing test, and I failed the hearing test, so they discharged me. And I was furious. I had sold a car, quit a job, and enlisted, and now they're going to send me home. And I was really looking forward. It was tough. Marine Corps training is one of the toughest trainings that there is. I mean, there's no mercy. I think that's probably tightened up a little bit today, but back in those days, drill instructors could do anything they wanted to you. So, I mean, if you goofed up, and when one person goofed up in boot camp, everybody suffered for it. And then again, that night, you paid for it.
Yeah.
So it was interesting, and it was, you have to be on the tough side, and our family was always, from the tough side.
I wish that more things were ran like that today. I always say that. And if people knew they had something coming to them, they'd probably be straightened up a little bit more. And they had that teamwork mentality, and that, we do that coaching the boys, and we do that around here, trying to get everybody to lean on each other. And one of you screws up, everybody has to pay for it. And that's the way.
Well, I think everybody should experience, discipline like that. It changes people, and it, puts that maturity into them, and it does it in a rough manner. But so it was tough times, but it was something you did for your country.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. I always say I look back in my life and I think about any single decision I've made, and a couple different ones. If I would have made the opposite decision, I would have been a completely different place. And whether it be, if I decided to go one way on the highway or the other way on the highway, if I would have decided to do drugs instead of not do drugs, if I would have, made simple decisions, where would I be at today? And I guess when I think about you in the Marine Corps, if you had stayed in, if you'd gone to Vietnam, what would have been so much different in life today?
Well, there's no second guessing that.
Right. So, as we move forward here, and now let's start talking about building houses and building in general. Why become a builder? Why in the world would anybody want to do this?
You don't have your right mind, for starters.
That ain't no lie.
It's something that always fascinated me. My dad was a real estate broker for 36 years. He started out, he had a little grocery store when he got out of the service over on Harrison and Bono Avenue. And on one side of him, there was a realtor, and the other side was an insurance agent. And because of my dad's sales ability, they were both bugging him to come to work for him. And so he decided to go with this guy by the name of Bill Ferris. And he was a small realtor and had a little shop right there in Bono. And so my dad got his license, and he worked for Bill Ferris for a year. Now, in those days, after 1 year, you could get your broker's license. No continuing education. All you had to do was take the test. And so that's what he did. And then he opened up a little office. And one of the things that happened was he started selling for a builder by the name of Bob Bauman, actually out in Miami town. And he worked for him for a while, and Bob decided to quit building. He had some heavy equipment, and he got tired of it, and so he started running the equipment. He asked my dad what he was going to do. And then he said, well, why don't you, and my dad said, I have the real estate business. And so he said, why don't you build a house? So I guess my dad thought about it, and he read some books, and he bought a lot from Bruni Harpenau over on Karen Avenue in Bridgetown, and he built a house.
Huh.
It was a free enterprise system. So he bought a lot, built a house. The funny thing about it is they were all brick and backup in those days, and on the floor joist you had to put fire cuts. He didn't know how to do that. So he went over to Bruni Harpenhouse and made a copy off of one of their floor joists. Then he had the floor joists delivered to his house and cut all the fire cuts, they call them fire cuts, on the floor joists, then took them over and put them on the foundation. Now, I was, I think, 11 at the time, and so I'd work with him, after school, and I even, Bud Keeper used to dig our foundations, and if you can believe it, I used to ride on the back of that 955 Caterpillar and just hang on to the gas cap and on the back bumper, and he'd dig the foundations. Can you imagine today?
Right.
So I just loved it, being around it, and so then he continued building, but he wasn't a full-time builder. In '59, he started building apartment buildings. And myself and some of my friends, we go down and put sheeting on the roof and, all the odd jobs for $1 an hour. And so I just grew up with it. And I was always building things in the backyard. There was a place called Tony's Fruit Market close to us, and we'd go up there and get orange crates and pineapple crates and all these things, and then we'd tear them apart. He'd give them to us, and we'd tear them apart, take all the nails out of it, and we'd build something. We'd build little shacks and little, like, houses in the backyard, and so it just kind of came natural to me.
So, your dad is, when was, we'll talk about him in a little bit, I guess, but when was he played baseball for the Reds and he was a Cincinnati Cop. Was that before or after this era?
Well, he went down and he went to Hughes High School, and he'd go down and catch for the Reds in batting practice. And he was a real athlete. He played, baseball, basketball, football in high school, and I'm not real clear about what he did in college, but he was signed by the Reds, and I gave him like $500. Well, my dad was kind of raised by his uncle, and his uncle said, you're not, that's a gigolo's job to play baseball. You're not going to do that. And so he quit the Reds. He got a job on the police department in the early 40s. And then, of course, he was drafted and went into the Marine Corps. And he was in weatherology. So anyway, I was, when he was in the Marine Corps, I was born. He was away. They had flag conditions. And when I was born, they put up a pink flag or a blue flag. And that's how I knew that, Mom delivered.
You're the oldest, right? You're the oldest of three?
Yeah, I'm the oldest. I have two sisters. We're 3 years apart. So then after the war, he went back on the police force for I think a year or two. And he said if he didn't make lieutenant in a year or two, he was going to quit. And he didn't make lieutenant. And so then that's when he went into the real estate business. So from there, I just I always had an interest in it.
Yeah. So you and so that's how you get into the building business in general, and then you and him are building together at some point, and then you and him and Mom's dad, Grandpa Lohr.
Well,
you start building
in 1966. I had gotten out of the Marine Corps, and I went to work for Cincinnati Milling Machine, and hated it. I wouldn't see daylight until 2:00 on Saturday afternoon, and I always had a problem with that, being confined. And so we talked about building some houses, and so we bought 3 lots from a guy by the name of George Zuckman down on McKelvey Road. And
who's we? This is you and your dad, or is this
my dad and I?
Okay.
And the funny part about it was, and my dad was a whiz at this. The the lots were sitting there, and George wanted to sell them. So we made a deal with him where we gave him $200 down on each lot, so $600. And then we went to the bank and borrowed money. And in those days, you could overborrow on a loan. So we overborrowed on the loan, and on the first draw, we paid George the money we owed him.
How much were the lots? Do you remember?
$4,000
a piece.
And we sold the houses for like $17,900, you know. And they were 3 little ranches, 3-bedroom ranches in the basement, in the garage, in a 2-car garage in the basement. There wasn't much to them, but we did everything ourselves: the concrete, the framing. They were brick and backup, but we set the trusses and even put the shingles on, painted it. You know, we did everything. And the amazing part about that is we were doing it, and one day I went down and I turned the corner on McKelvey, and there was a sign there that said H.G. Wieland and Son Builders.
Huh.
And so I was in. And we worked together through that in one contract house. And I think we built a 8-family apartment building. And then he wasn't going to build again, for a while. So now this is back in 66 and 67.
Why wouldn't he build for a while? He just decided he didn't want to do it or get enough money?
Well, he had his real estate business.
Yeah.
And so one winter I took a job driving a big dump truck, a Rio dump truck for a friend of mine. And I drove that for, I think, 3 months. And then I said, I got to do something else. So I bought a lot down in Coverbridge Acres. And I built a house down there.
That over off of Mill Road?
Off of Mill Road, yeah. And sold it right away. Now, I have to tell you, my dad handled the real estate on it. I built a couple of houses in that neighborhood. And then I was off and running. And I got my loans through Antonio's Savings Loan. And I had a heck of a time because I didn't have any credit. So what I did was went around to different savings and loans and borrowed $500, and then I'd pay it back in 30 days, and that established my credit. And then Antonio gave me my first loan, and my dad handled the real estate for Antonio. Now, he didn't co-sign me, but I'm sure that he had some sway there.
Influenced him.
And so they gave me the loan, and it wasn't for very much. But I bought the lot, and the only way I could buy the lot is I borrowed money from my grandmother. Now, my grandmother wasn't a wealthy person. My dad wasn't going to lend me the money, and he just didn't believe in that. And I think he was afraid I wouldn't pay him back because we were too close, but I don't know that. He never said that. But my grandmother, we drew up a mortgage agreement, and I paid her 6% interest. And again, I borrowed the money from Antonio, and I overborrowed. That lot was $8,000. I overborrowed $8,000 and paid her back on the first draw, which is a little longer than 30 days. And so she was happy with that. She got 6% on her money. So then she wanted to do it again. I said, well, we better do it.
Right.
And that really got me started on my own.
Huh.
And sometimes I wonder if I kind of shut my dad out because he took me in, and then when I went out on my own, I didn't take him in. But nothing was ever said. But in future years, I always look back and wondered that.
Yeah. So is WLW Builders, is that after this time you're talking about, or is that before this time you're talking about?
Yeah, well, your mother and I got married in 69, and Sue's dad, your grandfather, Dale, and I worked together. We were, we became friends, and if I wasn't doing anything, I'd go out and help him. And, he had a hardware store in Mount Healthy, and he was one of those guys that could do anything. And when people came into the hardware store, he had to tell them how to do it. Yeah. Or show them, Yeah. And it helped sales. And then it got to be the point where they were opening up all these big box stores, and the hardware store was kind of going down. So he decided to do some remodeling. And then he built a house. And so I had some experience with it, so I went out and helped him. And it was funny because there was a time when your grandmother and your grandfather and myself, we set trusses. Your grandmother was up in the truss nailing the stays on.
I can believe that.
And she was probably in her late 40s then. And we, the three of us, did the whole roof. And so I guess I worked for him for a little bit, and then there was a time when we did some houses together. We built our house, our first house, and he was always over there helping me with it.
On Maria, that was on Maria over off.
That was on Maria, Burlington Meadows, and then we ended up buying the lots out, or I did anyway. From a guy by the name of Leggett. He was done building, and they were in the boat business. And so we bought the lots out from Leggett, and there was, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 lots left. So we built those houses out, and a couple of those houses we built for friends, some friends that we've been friends with for 60 years now. And so we went partners on that. And after that, he didn't want to branch out too much. But the unique part about it is we were building my house, and we'd all work on it. You know, everybody would work on it. Some of Sue's uncles, they'd all come and help. That's just the way the family was. And my dad and Dell, when we got the subfloor on, they drew chairs on the floor, and they said, "These are our chairs," you know. And so we got to be, all three of us got to be close. And one day we were working on the house, and my dad said, "Why don't we start a company and just build apartment buildings?" Because that's what my dad liked to do. He had a bunch of apartments. So the first thing we did is Dell and I built an apartment building for my dad. It was a 17-unit apartment, and we did all the work on it. And of course, my dad was there, you know. Well, the closer we got, to the part where we would form a corporation and build apartments. Now, I still had my single-family building business, and now I'm going to jump into this partnership with these other two gentlemen. And my dad and my father-in-law got along exceptionally well. And so we ended up buying some property, and we built a 60-unit apartment building on North Bend Road. And we worked together on that. We framed it. We poured the concrete. In those days, we built it with brick and backup and Plexicore flooring. So the buildings went up pretty quick because rain or snow, once you got up to the first floor, they could come in and set the Plexicore flooring, whether it was raining or not. They had a crane come in and set the floors. And then the bricklayer would go on, and then we'd frame the next floor. And then when you got to the third floor, it was the same way, and they put the roof on. And so we worked closely together, and we started that company. It was called WLW Builders. My father-in-law's name was Lore, and so it was Wieland, Lore, and Wieland. So we called it WLW Builders, and that's what we incorporated as.
Do you have any problems with the naming rights on that from
No,
from
we
the radio
didn't
station?
because it was a different set of circumstances, different business. And so we did that, and then I kept building the single families, which kind of conflicted with them, and but I guess we built an apartment building over on Ferguson Road in Westwood, and during the process of that, my dad died in 1974. Very unexpected, and it's a long story, but he and I played baseball together 2 nights a week. He was 57, and I guess I was in my 30s. And he would go out in the spring of the year and thought he was a young pup. And he was a powerful guy. He was like 6'2", and he hit a double and tried to stretch it into a triple and pulled a ligament in his leg going to third base. Well, he limped around on it for a couple of weeks, and finally he went to the doctor and they put it in a cast. And the problem with a cast is, your blood doesn't purify itself from no movement. And he had a blood clot, went to his brain, to his heart, and died in 10 seconds. Now, I wasn't there. I was working on a house in a subdivision we had, and I went up to get some lumber, and when I came back, the cement finisher said, "You got to get home right away." And so when I got home, and they told me what happened, and we were on our way to the hospital. Well, I knew that at that point, he was gone. So it was really a shock.
Yeah.
He went from perfect health to death in 10 seconds, except for, the torn ligament.
That's an unbelievable story. I want to get into that a little bit more here in just a second. I want to keep talking about building. So I guess I always thought that you guys were building WLW Builders, and then you just decided to go out on your own. But you were already building on your own in the early 60s and then in mid 60s. And then you and Mom met, and then you get married, and then you started working with Grandpa Lohr, not as much as with Grandpa Wieland. And then you guys all three started working together. And then he dies, and then what happens? So then you end up deciding to go out and you're building on your own, and Grandpa Lohr is remodeling. How's that work?
Yeah, well, after that, we sold the apartment building on Ferguson Road, and then there's a couple things happened. One is they regulated gas, so apartments were kind of, not as profitable, let's put it that way. So we sold that building, and then we dissolved the corporation. And then Grandpa, Sue's dad, he was always a remodeler, so he just kept doing remodeling, and I grew a little bit in the building business.
Were you nervous at all? I mean, when you go to do this, I mean, I still wake up every day with a little bit of nervousness and wondering, things moving forward. I mean, you've told me all along that you're never going to know what it's going to do, and that makes you nervous. But starting out, I mean, I talked to Alan Schmidt Sr., and he always told me how he'd come home every night and throw up in the sink because he was so scared to death. And I know how it goes, and I just didn't know how you felt back then, or if you were just powering forward and excited and young and ambitious.
Some of that is like your brother Mike. He says, never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
That's what we say about him. That's not what he says.
I don't think I ever worried about it that much.
Really?
You make your decision and you go with it, and whatever's to be will be. I mean, I started with nothing. If I end up with nothing, I'm even.
Wow.
So I don't know. I think my decisions were calculated, and not that I hit a home run every time out. Believe me, but for the most part, we made it work.
What did Mom weigh in on it? What did she have to say about
it? She tells me this, and I guess when we first got married, she said, "Well, how are we going to make a living?" And I said, "Well, just let me worry about that." And she let it go at that. She
still does.
So she trusted me, through the years.
So when I feel this a lot, and did you ever feel any pressure like that? I mean, when all the cards are laid in front of you, and you're the one who's got to make the decisions, and you're the one that's got to power forward, and now your dad's passed away, and you got married, and now you're the one that's in charge of doing all these things. Did you ever feel a pressure that you needed? Maybe Mom's always been this person that's been like, you're the one, you make the decision, and you go with it, and I'll take care, I'll follow. But did you ever feel like you needed help? You needed somebody to be there and somebody that you could lean on and ask questions to? Well,
yeah. I mean, after Dad died, there was nobody to pick up the phone and call for business. Dell wasn't necessarily a businessman, and to make decisions like that. I mean, he was a great craftsman and an honest, good guy, and I mean, he knew what he was doing. He built houses and remodeling, but there wasn't really anybody. One of the guys that I used to use as a sounding board was the executive officer of the Home Builders Association. And this was more in the mid-'70s. Orville was the executive officer, and he was like a Philadelphia lawyer, And I used to use him as a sounding board. And he and I got to be pretty close. And you got to be close with him through the years. And he was a heck of a teacher. If you were willing to listen, you'd learn something from Orville.
Yeah, I always thought he was a great guy and a funny guy. I mean, he smoked cigarettes and cigars and drank whiskey. It seemed like at 10 o'clock in the morning, and was a really cool dude. I guess I look at it a little bit differently than what you just described him as. I mean, he was also a great mentor. But so that makes me think about the next one was did you have anyone influence you? I mean, did you have people that were giving you advice, people that you looked up to, people that you considered maybe not necessarily heroes, but people that you felt a common bond with? Are you going to tell us who it is, or you want me to say it? You're talking about Jay Buchert, right?
Jay Buchert.
Yeah.
We're friends today. We see pretty much of them. We have a place in Florida. They have a place in Florida, not too far from us. So he spent a whole week, and we went over things from A to Z, and opened up his books and showed me his chart of accounts. And you'd have to know Jay. I mean, he enjoys that sort of thing to begin with. And I'll never forget it. He helped me in a lot of different ways. One of the things that happened was about 1975, Orville Brown, in all his wisdom, decided that the association was getting stagnant. All the old guys were there, and there was no new blood coming in. It happens with country clubs, the old guys there, and there's nothing new coming in. There's nothing to revitalize it. So Orville asked Jay to recruit, some younger people to come on the board. And I was one of the ones that he approached. And I had joined the association, I think, in 1975. 76, I built in Homerama. And so I was building out there in Homerama. We didn't have 20 houses going on, and so I spent a lot of time at Homerama. And when they were putting the show together, I started helping them. If I had an hour here or an hour there, or waiting on a meeting, I'd help them, put park benches together and all that sort of thing. And so that led Jay to ask me to be more involved. And so I did. I started working and helping with Homerama for 76, 77, 78. And I think in 79, I became the chairman. Bob Becker was president of the Home Builders, and he asked me if I would chair the show. And I did that for the next 20 years. And I think the thing was important to me about it was that we built in it, and it gave us the exposure that we needed desperately. And I think it was one of the biggest fundraisers, money makers for the Home Builders Association was helped us operate. So I enjoyed it for that reason. And I guess then in 83, I ran for the board in 70.
Would have been 77, 78 or 79 because you were president in 83.
Yeah.
It was 5 years.
So I ran for the board. The first time I ran, I didn't make it.
Huh.
And I was unknown. And the second time, I was more involved in chairing committees, and some of the committees I didn't know anything about, but they didn't have a lot of people. So I chaired every committee that they had at that time. And then I ran for the board, made it in, I think, 77 or 78. became president in 83.
Huh. That's a fast timeline. It probably felt like it was forever. I know when I was there, it feels like when you look back on it, it seems like, man, that was a short period of time. But when you're in the mix of it, it seems like, man, this is going, it's taken forever to get there. And maybe you felt like, I've been in this Home Builders Association forever, but now you're president 4 years after you joined the board. That's pretty good.
I don't know. I don't know whether I thought of it that way. We were just always busy. We were always going, always doing something. Time passed by so fast.
Yeah.
It still does.
No, it still does.
I wish it would slow down a little bit now, but I'm pushing 80, and it just seems like life went by so fast.
So we'll talk about the home builders a little bit more here and along the way here. But so what do you think the biggest challenge that you ever faced in building houses was? Because I think about the recession, the 80s interest rates. I mean, what was, that's another question. What was worse, the 80s interest rates, or was it the recession?
Well, the recession. The 80s was, excuse me, the 80s was interest. Jimmy Carter was president, and not a very good president. And, they were spending money like it was going out of style. And, inflation took over and interest rates went up. We thought we were smart, and we made a deal with the bank that we'd pay 0.5% over prime, for our loans. And then interest rates shot up to 16%, so we were paying 16.5% interest on our money. And things were slow, and so I had to do something. So I laid some people off, and I bought a block of money from McLean Savings and Loan in West Virginia. They offered this program, and you put up like $10,000, and you reserve like $1 million worth of loan. And when interest rates went up to 16, 17%, we were offering 9.5% interest rates. And it was negative amortization. And so it was kind of an expensive advertising program because we could advertise it. I didn't use all the money, so I sold half of it to Vern Bolander Sr. John Bolander and Vern and I grew up together in Pennytown, and I just had become friends with their dad. And so I sold him half of the money, and the rest of it we used for end loans. And the idea was that someone could get in a house at low interest rates, negative amortization, and when the crunch was over, then they could refinance, and they would have bought a house that was a lot more reasonable than when things were, slow.
So there was ways to work through it. So
it saved the day.
Yeah.
So it was just a lucky thing. It could have went the other way, but it didn't.
Did you? So I always think about, and I think a lot of builders do, we think about the recession like it was yesterday, and every decision you make, you're thinking about how's this going to come back and bite me later on, like it did in 2000. For us, I felt like it was 2006 to 2011 was the first year we really started coming back together, and which seemed like it was 100 years. And so, but there was not a lot of ways that you could get creative to work through it. You just had to put your head down and go to work every day.
Well, in any business, you're going to have your ups and downs, and it's stressful, to say the least, when things get tight. The only thing that keeps you from making any money is the interest that you pay, unless you just royally screw up everything you touch. But so when the interest rates go up, the automobile sales go down, housing goes down, everything goes down. So getting back to your question about whether the recession was worse, well, the recession was worse.
Union Savings Bank, they put a blanket loan on everything we had, and that's how the assets, and they looked at us and said, hey, I think you're going to make it, and here's what we're going to do, and that's how they did it. All right, everybody, thank you again for listening. That was the first episode ever of the WB Download, and that was our first interview with my dad, Jack Wieland. I want to say that it's a lengthy interview. It's going to be 2 episodes in total, and it's a long listen, but I also want to make sure that we understand what we're trying to get to is the history of Wieland Builders, the history of where he started. And I think that so many of these stories are nostalgic, and you just don't hear too many of them anymore unless you talk to some of these guys who are older, who just went out on a whim and started these businesses and started from nothing and really brought it to what they were when he decided to retire. So it's really cool. It's a cool story for me. I think a lot of his friends are going to enjoy it. I hope everybody in the industry enjoys it. I hope people really get a good listen out of it. So we'll be back the 4th Tuesday of the month. Remember that we air our episodes on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of the month. And after my dad, the next guest that we have coming to us will be Preacher Ben Hodges from Four Corners Church. He's my pastor at the church. It's a church we attend. And you're going to find out what a pastor has to do with building houses. It's going to be pretty cool. So also in between now and then, I want to remind you to subscribe to the WB Download on your favorite podcast service. And also, if you want to be a part of the conversation, send your questions, topics, or if you want to be a guest on the podcast, email me at wbdownload@wielandbuilders.com. That's wbdownload@wielandbuilders.com. And to see more of the behind the scenes of our podcast and to learn more about Wieland Builders and to view our award-winning custom homes, visit our website at wielandbuilders.com. It's WIELAND builders.com. Thank you again for listening, and I look forward to coming to you next week.